The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat about row. We're with the entrance. Prepare for takeoff. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. It's great to have you along for the ride on this Tuesday, November 7th, Wednesday, November 8th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the cold and snowy mountains of central British Columbia as we are here 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music, get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. Now, we're all over the social media part, and I hope you are too. And I hope you're following us at Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Spaced Out Radio. It is no longer Spaced Out Radio Show, so you got to go to Spaced Out Radio on YouTube. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows from iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you head on over to patreon.com, for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR as well. If you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. You got to sign into one of our chat rooms, either on Spreaker, Revolution Radio, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're a Twitter junkie, use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I'll connect live with you there during the show. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read the Encounter online. Check out my latest blog as well. And if you've had an experience you cannot explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We also got great videos from UFO Seekers and Contact TV. Now, normally the first Tuesday of every month, we have Rachel Kirkland on the show with her feature, The Spiritual You. However, one of her children, infested with the flu bug, thought it would be nice to pass it on to Mom. So Rachel's down for the count tonight, but we'll be back bright and shiny on Tuesday, December 5th. So tonight's show, we are hopping into the paranormal. I wrote my latest blog at spacedoutradio.com, which is getting some reaction from the paranormal community on whether or not it's time for a governing body and a code of conduct for teams to follow. It's an idea that's been passed around for the last decade or so because of the different techniques and fields of study that go along with the over 36,000 paranormal teams in North America. Many are supportive of the idea, while others tend to lean on the side of caution in bringing in more rules and regulations, which is a fair argument as well. Tonight, we're joined by a number of people who are paranormal investigators. We have Brandie Wells from 555 Paranormal Productions. We have Carin Smurl, who's been a guest on this show. And we have Everett Thiemer in hour number 3 from Forest Moon Paranormal. Eric Cooper will join us, and Corey Rees, as well as Eric Markham as well. So I want to bring in Carin, Brandie, and Everett to the show. How are you guys?
I'm doing awesome.
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Well, you know what? There is a lot of debate right now on this, and the reason why I wrote the blog is there's been a number of people that I've been watching over Facebook over the last couple of months who have really been saying some pretty horrific stuff about what's going on in the paranormal these days. Now, for a lot of people, they'll say it's nothing new. But before we get heavy into this topic, Brandie, let's start with you because you're a brand new voice here on Facebook. I actually put it out there about my blog, and you actually responded. When did you start in the paranormal, and what brings you to the cause?
Well, I have only been investigating for 4 years, but I am a clairvoyant and a psychic medium. And I've also been working in my field actively, putting myself out there for 4 years. I've had a paranormal production company for 1 year, and I have been hosting events where I open them to the public and actually organize these investigations for only 2 years. So I am very fresh in the field, but I have, over the years, really pulled in a lot of different elements around event planning. So I've just evolved into this role along with my business. I actually was really intrigued by your statement and wanted to reply because I have seen, through exploring the paranormal at others' events and, through social media, there are a lot of very strong opinions on how things should and should not be done. And I personally have only seen a few things that I would never allow at my events. So I don't know. I'm intrigued by this conversation. I'm curious what's going to end up coming through with me only having my business for the last year, where I'm actually filming, capturing evidence, and the more you put yourself out there, the more people you attract, good, bad, or indifferent. So I'm really curious where this conversation is going to go.
We bring in Carin Smurl now. It's been a while since you've been on the show with us, but your family is legendary, known in the field of the paranormal, Carin, as you have been literally involved with this since childhood. So maybe explain your family history and how you got involved with the paranormal.
Sure. Starting when I was about 2 or 3, I started to have my own paranormal experiences, which turned into, obviously this big to-do, and it was a demonic haunting, as well as we were being haunted by human spirits as well. So, Dave, long story short, most people that are aware, know that we sought help from the Catholic Church, which kind of didn't go our way. Then we sought out help from Ed and Lorraine Warren, who did get involved and were able to help us by getting us help from the church. They were really the force behind us that kind of convinced the church to finally help us. And through many years and many exorcisms and a lot of heckling and a lot of stuff that we went through with the media. I mean, it was a tough time. But growing up at a time where it's interesting now that I look back, because my experience happened at a time where there was no paranormal field. There was, but it was pretty much in Lorraine Warren. I mean, there were no TV shows. There were no, Conjuring movies. I mean, the field was just not like it is now. So to see it evolve into what it is now, it's very interesting. There's a lot of good and I think a lot more bad going on right now. So I think I have a lot to say about this topic, because I don't want to get too deep into it right now, because I'm sure we will, but I have a lot of opinions, and, I obviously think things are done one way and somebody else would think that they're done another. So we all bring our own opinions to the table. Unfortunately, this is supposed to be a scientific field, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's not a lot of scientists in this field. So it's very interesting. You have the beginners and you have the so-called experts and the demonologists and the Wiccans and, Catholics and non-Catholics, all bringing different techniques to the field. So it's just a melting pot right now. And I do think that we need some type of governing body. Do I think that's going to happen? In my opinion, no. But would I like to see something happen? Absolutely. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens tonight, just even this discussion even.
Well, this is a discussion that is going to open up a lot of people, because I can tell you, since I had to change topics tonight, and since I put out the blog, which is funny because I've had probably 20, 30 people come out and say, why are you even trying? And I can tell right then and there they haven't read the blog, because I'm not the one trying. I'm a journalist. I'm writing an article and a blog for our website, spacedoutradio.com. So Everett Thiemer, our head editor for the Encounter Online, this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people in the paranormal. You have the people who take it as a career. I heard from Greg and Dana Newkirk about it, John Tenney about it, where they say, nah, this is just garbage, this isn't needed in the field. Then you get people like Brandie and Carin who've been involved in this field almost a lifetime or even a short time are saying, yeah, maybe it is time that we look at some of this. So Everett, as editor of the Encounter Online, why is this topic such a topic of heated debate in the paranormal, do you think?
You know, it is heated, isn't it? I didn't expect the response on both sides that you got. I think it's heated because you have some people who, for lack of a better word, are untrained, and they don't want any kind of interference in what they're doing because they believe that they're doing it correctly, whether they are or aren't. And then you have the other whole side that they're doing it for a career and they don't want that messed with. They don't want to have to deal with anybody else's ideas or rules or regulations. So I think you have these two sides that are really on the same side, and then in the middle you kind of have not exactly the skeptical crowd or the scientific crowd, but you have sort of a group of people who are saying, how do we fix this? How do we kind of go down the same path altogether? And I think what's happening is that, you know, everybody is getting in their camps and nobody wants to talk, which unfortunately that's very common in the paranormal field.
What do you think, Everett, and I'll get Carin and Brandie's opinion on this right afterwards, but what do you think, Everett, causes such an attitude or an ego about the paranormal? Because I haven't been in this field that long. I'm not a paranormal investigator. Yes, I write or do a paranormal tour at our museum, but I don't consider myself a paranormal investigator. I'm more, someone who's a fan of the paranormal. Yet, for some people, this enrages them. It's almost as bad as, and I hate to compare it to this, but it's like the paranormal version of the gun debate in the United States. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people get heated over this topic on whether or not, there should be some code of conduct, yet in the same breath, everybody seems to be melting for paranormal unity of some sort. Everett.
Well, I think part of it is that because there is no training, there is no formal education to begin with. Everybody has done it their own way. And they don't want to change. They don't want to have to face anybody else's rules because they have their own. And they don't want to alter what they're doing, whether they are doing it like Forrest Moon and doing it in a professional, monitored way, or if they're a group of kids going out on a Saturday night. They don't want to change what they're doing because they've taught themselves and they believe their way is right. And I think that's going to be the biggest problem, is convincing people that they have to have some sort of oversight and that in the long run it would probably benefit the entire paranormal community.
Brandie, before I get your response to that, I just want to mention to our listeners or who are in the SOR Space Travelers Club, I'm still blocked on Facebook until Friday. All right, that's when I'm allowed out of Facebook jail to post in my own room. So for any of you who haven't heard yet, I got blocked and arrested by Facebook for apparently spamming because Facebook's new rules. Apparently I was spamming my own Spaced Out Radio groups with too many posts. So I cannot post in any group until the 10th. So if you are in the SOR Space Travelers Club right now, yes, you are in the correct room with Rachel Kirkland on there. So make sure you chat in there if you don't mind. It is pinned at the top. Now, Brandie, getting to that same point, there is a lot of heated debate in regards to what is right and what is wrong in the paranormal, and yet in the same breath, like I said, everybody is literally calling or begging for some sort of what they call paranormal unity. What is your thoughts?
Well, my initial comment to you is about, the code of conduct and what it is. And it's all about social norms and those rules and responsibilities. What are the proper practices? And when we start creating those boundaries for people, you're going to instantly have resistance because everyone wants to do their own thing, like mentioned previously. But I'm finding that when I host investigations, I'm very methodical around layout and, my expectations of everyone who's there. And I do have rules and a waiver, and I don't allow crossing over. I don't allow taunting. You come sober and you stay sober. I mean, I've got my own expectations of people, and that's why I think I have a following in my events. People like to know those expectations. I've heard nightmares around some of these locations that I've rented. I mean, I think over the last year, I have rented, I think, up to 16 historic locations, and some of these are castles. I mean, they're well-respected properties. And a lot of these owners of these properties they're starting to come down on, creating their own rules because of some of the experiences they've had where people want to rent to investigate and they're coming in drunk. There's a whole story around they won't even allow water bottles in one of the locations because the entire group came in and filled their water bottles with vodka. And those things do set a very poor example of the field, and it's hard for owners of these properties to decipher, the good guy from the bad guy. But setting a code of conduct around the field, I don't think it's going to change that. And so that's where I struggle with this. I was talking about like groupthink mentality, how if everybody is all striving for that, we could possibly create it. But there's so much resistance that I'm not sure if everyone could really, this is such a vast field. I was comparing it to religion and how people, if you really zoom out on time and look at how religion has changed, and we're falling away from religion now. People want more freedom now. They don't want to be bound to a religion. And if you were to compare this to a similar, analysis and say that everyone is really looking for some sort of an outline or something to be bound to so that there are rules and regulations and common ground, could it work? So, I would love to think that there's a code of conduct, but honestly, it's more like the term I would prefer is almost like using the golden rule. You need to be respectful, and not everybody is.
Carin, what's your thoughts on the ego that is kind of keeping this back from even gaining every inch of interest that it could possibly get, considering everybody seems to want it, but nobody wants to do anything about it?
Oh, where do I start, Dave? Well, let's put it this way. I'm going to be, Brandie tried to be really nice, and Everett tried to be really nice, so I'll try to be nice, but I'm going to talk a little bit more real. First of all, I want to start by saying, and a little bit of what Brandie just said, like, how do you take a field, first of all, something like a spirit, we're talking spirits. We're talking spirits past, the afterlife, ghosts, demons, what have you. How do you, first of all, put regulations on something that we really know nothing about? I mean, we can read about these things and we can read about experiences, but until we pass on, how does anybody really, really know the truth? So first of all, how do you even put, a box around that? It's not like, you're going to school to learn how to be a heart surgeon and learning the structure of the heart and the function of the heart and things like that. This is something that is based on belief, and, you just can't. Secondly, I don't really think, I think a lot of people in the field say they want it because they want to look good. They say, oh, yeah, we're paranormal unity. I think they say it, but really, from the experiences that I've had talking to different people and seeing what goes on in social media and working with other groups and being at different events, there's just so much just like anybody else, just like going to work or going to school, you're going to be nice to people's face and you're going to be nasty behind their back. Everybody wants to put on this front like we want to work together, we want to be great, we want to be, unified, but really I don't think they want it. I think it's more talk than anything. And it's mainly because, like you said, everybody kind of has their own beliefs and their own practices and their own, ways of doing things, and they don't want to be told to do it another way. Also, like, Brandie said, people are bringing vodka and they're partying. A lot of people don't take it seriously. They want to go to the historic locations. They want to have a good time. They want to, be scared, and they want to go home. And then there's the people who really are in the field to help spirits, help the spirits find peace and rest, or help families, get resolution to maybe darker issues that are going on in their homes or what have you, like something I went through. So you have those two groups. How do you weed out the people who are in it for the right reasons, and how do you weed out the people that are in it for just the fun and the entertainment value? And also, I mean, how do you, again, like going back to, it being a spiritual thing, we don't really know as much as we think we know. Nobody can, there's no scientific evidence to say this is how it is and this is how it's not. How do you, there's no test, there's no course to really prepare someone for these things. And if so, if a doctor has to go to school and pay for this degree, how many people would want to do that if they were told, okay, you can't investigate unless you go through this course, you pay for this, you're certified. You wonder how many people would actually do that, and who's going to teach it, and who's going to, there's too many what ifs and too many variables to even make it work, I think.
I'm going to hold off on my personal opinion on this because realistically, I'm the one who wrote the article here. The only thing I will say about it is, do I think it would work? Not at all. Not at all. But I want to read some comments here from people who have responded to this, and I want to get your opinion in. Anybody from the panel, feel free to jump in. Holly said that for whatever it's worth, in her opinion, a code of conduct should just be plain old common sense. She says, I mean, if we have to have rules laid out for us about how to behave while we're investigating, then there is something intrinsically wrong. The golden rule seems to be the most reliable code of conduct. Treat others the way you'd want to be treated, regardless of whether you're dead or alive. But that's her opinion. Now, Greg Newkirk from him and his wife Dana, they have a touring show of haunted objects. They tour around the United States and some into Canada. Greg said on Twitter today, I'm all for people not yelling at ghosts, but whenever paranormal codes of conduct come up, I'm reminded that the people yammering for them are generally the ones doing the least innovation in paranormal research. There's some, validity there. There's other people who were stating that it is absolutely necessary at this point. All right. Jim states from Vancouver Supernatural, rules are for the sheep in this industry, so as long as you have respect for your clients and the spirits, that's all that you should need. Those who think they have the right to make the so-called rules should deflate their heads. Darren says point blank, no codes. Bonnie says absolutely. Deb on Twitter states, you're bringing this attention or you brought attention to a problem. Keep on keeping on, Dave. So there are a lot of different people out there who are making this up. Not making things up, but there are a lot of people who have very strong opinions. Joe messaged me before the show. He's got really great hair, by the way. He says his thoughts on the rules of conduct. Every paranormal group out there, including Bigfoot hunters, storefront psychics, and amateur ghost hunters, are going to ask, who are you guys to pick who goes in charge? And let's say there is a code of conduct. What do you do about it? How do you organize it? How do you make it happen? How do you know that everything is certified, that these people who sign up are going to do it the way they are supposed to? He goes, this is a topic that is a neat idea, but it just isn't going to fly, and it makes people who talk about it sound really arrogant. So, anybody, I'm curious your thoughts on people in the audience who are having troubles with this topic.
I agree with Joe. I think in a perfect world, it would be great to think that everybody's going to follow the golden rule. But not everybody does. Not everybody intends to. And the idea that, somebody is going to do one thing and maybe to another person, that is a violation. So you're always going to have this arguing. And I think that, like I said, the idea of operating by the golden rule is great, but naive. And on the other hand, I think we almost need to take a step back and try and see how, instead of talking about how we could do it, start to formulate a plan. Because realistically, to do something like this, you almost have to make these ghost hunting groups register.
And Everett's phone usually cuts out right about now. So, lady, yeah, he was on a roll there. Let's try and get him back here. Hold on a second here. Let's see if he's going to pick up. Sometimes it goes to voicemail. So,
and I'm playing the role of Cooper tonight, aren't I?
Yes, you are. So you were on quite a roll. Continue on.
Oh, I don't know if I can now, but I don't know. I think that instead of talking about all these different groups fighting about this, I think somebody is going to have to step up and say, this is, at least put out the first plan, the first idea, whether it be making these people register, which that could be good because it would weed out the ones that are just doing it for fun. But now these groups essentially are businesses, which that brings on business expenses. But yet we all pretty much agree that you can't charge for what you're doing. So there's kind of a big circle that we have to figure out how to kind of break.
Ladies?
That actually really triggered something for me right there, because I have been ridiculed for charging. But I am paying thousands of dollars to rent these locations and create an experience for people. So that's a...
But I'm going to hop in here, Brandie. I think there's a big difference between a paranormal tour and an actual investigation. Like, I charge for my tour.
Exactly.
I charge for my tour $20, which, I get to use the museum for free, but in return for getting to do it, because it's a very good hobby for me, I actually turn all the money over to the museum because it's a non-profit society. And you know what? Every now and again, we take some money out of there to buy our tour guides, as we call them, pizza. So we'll buy pizza with it. But you were doing something different than an actual ghost investigation where you're going into someone's house and charging. I did a story today for the Encounter Online about a psychic in Washington State. Thank you, Eric Cooper, for tipping me off to this, who nailed a lady for over $50,000 that she was going to get rid of evil and demonic spirits in her house and around her family. 50 grand. And the lady got busted for it. So, I mean, there are shysters in this field who are more than willing to take advantage of those who are seeking some truth, some wonderment, and maybe the people who don't know are just a little too gullible.
Yep. And if I may add, Brandie, since you're new to the field, Brandie, let me just add, because I've been around for quite a while, and I've seen people go down a path where people just totally lose all respect for them. If exactly what Dave said, if you're doing an investigation and you're charging for an experience, you're having an event or what have you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with charging. But if somebody asks for your help and you charge them, to come into their home, then there is no faster way to lose credibility in this field than for somebody to find out that you charged a family to come into their home and help them. Now, if somebody wants to come to your shop or your home and say, I want a reading or I want my cards read or whatever it is that, people are into, that's different. But if somebody's saying, listen, I've got this going on in my life, my home, my family, and we need you to come in, we need help, we don't know where to turn, and you charge that person, that will discredit you faster than anything you could ever do in this field.
See, I find that fascinating because this is my career, it is my work, and I have done house clearings. Sometimes I am charging and sometimes I'm not. But I'm also supplying them with all the crystals. I am supplying them with rituals, and I continue working with them until it's done. So I'm not charging a lot, but it is my time, and my time is valuable.
But Dave,
yes, Everett.
As event organizers, you guys have the right from the very beginning to essentially require anybody to sign something saying that they're going to uphold and agree with and follow your rules. That, if they're sneaking alcohol in, or if they're smoking pot, or doing anything, you can have something where you can eject them immediately. And Absolutely. That, in a way, that's kind of a separate code of conduct or group of regulations over a team going into and investigate a home or a building for somebody to see what's going on.
Absolutely. And, we make everybody who comes in sign a waiver. And we have had people try and come in intoxicated. We have had people try to smuggle drinks into the tour. We've had people show up stoned that we have turned away. And you have to for your own safety in regards to that. And Brandie, I'm sure you would agree with that. You can't have that type of responsibility, especially when you're on someone else's property doing a tour.
Yeah, I've actually removed people. So, and it's pretty uncomfortable.
It totally is. It totally is. Thank goodness I have people who will do that for me, so I don't have to, worry about it. But that's okay. I got a couple of big guys who will help me out with that. Nonetheless, one of the things that I'm concerned, and in hour number 2, we're going to get into how you're going to set this up. If somebody was to do it, how should it be set up? How should it be policed? So on and so forth. And I think that's an important discussion to have in hour number 2, because the one thing that we can get into with this topic is a complete bitch session, which we don't want it to be. You know what I'm saying? Whether or not people are paying or not paying or what have you, the main category of this is what helps the paranormal. What do we got to do to get on track? One of the things I ended the blog on and the article on was the fact that, is it coming down to the day where with these stories, and they're not every day, but they are happening, okay, with these stories of people disrespecting places, disrespecting clients, taking advantage of people, so on and so forth, is it coming down to the day where we're going to see maybe the paranormal hauled into court, Carin? Because maybe someone conjured up a spirit so bad that it maybe led them to suicide or murder or something along those lines. Could we see it getting to that point? A lot of people will say, Carin, that's extreme, but the paranormal, considering there is no rules and guidelines, can be anarchic in the way people investigate and the way they feel their techniques work best for them. But a lot of people out there don't have as much resolve or concern for the public whom they're affecting.
Uh-huh. Oh, absolutely. I can see it. First, I mean, you want to start with, like, even just the little things. Like, I mean, I know there's already been people taken to court just for simple things like trespassing. I mean, you know, the ghost enthusiasts, and I'm calling ghost enthusiasts because I'm not calling them actual paranormal investigators. But, I mean, they've already been fined and taken to court for trespassing just to get onto a property that they weren't supposed to be on without permission. So, I mean, the little things like that have already happened. You know, there's people that have quote unquote paranormal issues in their home. If you're not qualified, I don't go in to if somebody calls me and says that, you know, I think there's a possibility that there's a demonic haunting. Can you help us? We don't go with a group of paranormal investigators. I don't have my own group anymore. I stopped that a long time ago. I call up whoever I needed to go at that time. I have a counselor. I have an ex-police officer. I have psychologists. I have a psychiatrist. I have a priest. I have the whole nine go, because not every time it's paranormal. I mean, a lot of the times we find that it's mental illness, that it's drug or alcohol addiction, that there's a history of sexual or mental or physical abuse that has gone on. So that's another thing. Like, you truly have to be trained or have a group that is trained to investigate. That is what the term investigate means. You're starting, is it paranormal? Is it not paranormal? Is it another issue? And you can get into some deep trouble. I mean, I've seen people go into homes that, oh, we're going to do an exorcism. We need a priest in here. Meanwhile, they're not even looking. Like, this lady's got 5 bottles of pills on her counter, no labels. Okay, the son's upstairs smoking pot. You know, there's 8 kids running around. The boyfriend that's living there, he's been arrested, you know, 6 times for this, that, and the other. There's all these other things going on in the home. And to go into a home and to approach it the wrong way, I mean, it's really dangerous. I mean, somebody could seriously get hurt. I mean, what if you went into a home and even you as a paranormal investigator were hurt because you didn't know what you were doing? I mean, you could be attacked, you could be hurt. There's just so many factors and so many things that you need to be prepared for when you do go into someone's home. So, I mean, there's just so many factors, and so many bad things can happen if you don't really know what you're doing.
Everett, do you see a time where we could actually see something from the paranormal head into the law courts? And more than just that, but if these historic sites continue to be ruined by people and keep shutting down, eventually this is going to affect some sort of governance. It could. And my theory on it, and this is just my point of view that I wrote in the blog, and I will stand behind my words, is wouldn't it be more smart, Everett, for the paranormal field to come together one way or another, okay, and create its own rules and guidelines rather than having some law forced? Because, let's face it, you know, it only takes one person to ruin it for everybody.
Yes, but we've seen individual cases where things have gone to court, you know, like was previously said, for trespassing and damage and things like that. I don't think there will ever be a time where the paranormal field as a whole is sued, but you are right that maybe at some point different communities will start to regulate what can and can't be done. But then how do you regulate somebody who is essentially just a loose group of people going into somebody else's house to investigate, or some people may say just play around, or however you want to label it? How do you regulate and enforce that? qualifications were mentioned before about bringing people in who are qualified. Well, we can't even really determine what qualifications are because we have no educational standards. There are no guidelines in the field. I mean, the idea that maybe you have somebody with a psychology background and maybe an environmental scientist or somebody in the biological fields, that makes sense. That's common sense, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're qualified in this field. So I think you're right in that at some point there will be a big situation. There will be a headline case where somebody gets sued for something. But I have a feeling it will be more than likely some sort of serious amount of damage or something done to a location. And I don't think initially that will affect the entire field, because if somebody is sued or prosecuted anywhere else, it doesn't affect any of the people that I know, that I investigate with, or that I work with. So I think a vast majority of the paranormal field is just going to go, oh, look at those guys. They just got in trouble. Big deal. And move on.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, but I'm taking this one step further, and, I'm not trying to go all Alex Jones here and make things, blow things out of proportion, but the fact is, we see it all the time with other groups. There's always a backlash. Okay, let's compare UFC fighting, cage fighting. 20 years ago, before the Maloof brothers bought the UFC for $2 million and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar business, there was no rules. Everybody was attracted to the fact that you could have a 160-pound Hoist Gracie taking on a 300-pound Tank Abbott. And there were no rules. There was no weight classes. There was nothing. And when Zuffa Entertainment took over the UFC, and yes, I'm using a sports analogy here because I'm a sports guy, okay, the first thing they did was they set up rules and guidelines and weight classes. Fighters were no longer allowed to punch other fighters in the privates, things like that, okay, because it was a free-for-all street brawl at the beginning. The purists hate it. What do we need more rules for? We want to watch this animal instinct of fighting between two men inside an octagon cage. But the fact is, rules were made, and you look at the UFC now, it just, I believe, sold for $8 billion. And I'm not saying that's going to happen to the paranormal, but they had to create rules in order to bring it more into the public and to take it more into the mainstream, which they were highly successful of doing. Now, this is where I see, quite similarly, the paranormal, where there is no rules, there is no guidelines, there is no governing body, and people are fighting that, saying we don't want that. There's enough rules in society, there's enough taxes in society, there's enough laws in society.
But the thing is that the rules for UFC only apply to the fighters who want to be part of the UFC. You can still have a background or a backyard fighting club if you want. Those rules only apply to the people who wish to fight in UFC events. In a way, that's very similar to, I know this is a bad word, but TAPS. They have their rules and regulations, and if you associate with them, you're expected to follow them. So I see where you can make that analogy, but again, there are a lot of fights going on out there that aren't sanctioned by the UFC, but they still go on, they still exist.
Absolutely, and we're not saying that every paranormal team has to join. I'm not. If I saw a group out there that said, "Okay, we're conducting a code of conduct," pick a group, ABC Paranormal. Okay, I'm not sitting here saying that. Yes, I'm going to take my paranormal team and make sure that we are a part of that. It's everybody's choice. But the rules and the guidelines that could be set up may come into effect because as more people want to go to Gettysburg, as more people want to go to Waverly Hills, as more people want to investigate museums and ships like the Queen Mary, is it up to the individual group then or the individual location to set that code of conduct? Or if you had a full governing body and registered teams with that body, does it not make it for a little bit more of a prevalence to the topic and to the seriousness of the investigation? Brandie.
I believe in accountability to create standards. So if, that kind of pulled it a different direction for me when you're making a statement, not everyone has to. I think the issue is that everything is so, look at even the way information is received now. It's all through social media. How would you create that? And that's what I was hearing earlier is, who would make those decisions, and what is the outline? What are the requirements? Is this some sort of an organization that, if you join it, it means that you have to abide by these rules? And I'm fascinated by it. I would love to think that it holds a higher standard if you were to participate in some sort of a code of conduct. But I feel confident in my business and in my event planning that I don't need that to create that accountability. But to participate in something that would create it, I'd be pretty proud to be part of that, because then, it's like being part of a formal group or a formal presentation. So I think that pulls it a whole different direction for me. I'm initially when I'm hearing this and, putting it out there, it's like, oh man, all that resistance and, who's going to make those decisions and is it realistic? But if you were to form something and pull that standard and that outline, it may end up bringing forth some real solid people, the people who do want to have those standards set forth.
Carin, what's your thoughts?
Dave, I had the same exact conversation about 10 years ago, and you see how far we've come in 10 years. We're still right. We're still 10 years talking about the same things that we're talking about now. I kid you not. And I had the same conversation on a radio show about 5 years ago. And everybody's like, how can we do this? How can we set it up? Who's going to do this? And then even in the past, I would say probably 3 years or so, I've seen a bunch of Facebook. I'll have to find one or two for you. I've been sent messages that have said, we've added you to this group because we want there to be a database of people in each state that we feel that are trusted, and people can contact you if they need help because we know that you'll steer them in the right direction. And I've seen a few of those pop up, and I've been added to a few of them. But here's the thing: these are just people that are starting these lists based on who they feel are trusted. Everybody has a different idea of who can be trusted, who knows what they're doing, who, you know what I mean? So it's like, again, it's not really a standard. It's like, okay, these are the people I trust. Now here's your list, and these are the people that you trust. And then this person's got a list, and here's the people that I would trust. So there's not even a standard there. Again, 10 years, Dave, we've been talking about this, and we're still at ground zero talking about it. How do we get this off the ground 10 years later?
I have no idea. A big comment by Derek in the Twitter hashtag Spaced Out Radio area. He says, Dave, the paranormal is already mainstream and at the peak of its popularity, possibly past its peak. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for the field, Everett?
I don't know. I don't know if it's at its peak or past it. Every time I think it's past it, it kind of grows a little bit. I think we're always going to have these little ups and downs in its popularity, but I think that, it's always going to be around, and that's what we need to consider. Whether there's 35,000 groups across North America or 3,500. They need, it would be nice to think that they're all living up to some standards. I just don't know if it's possible to implement that.
We only got about a minute and a half left before we go to break. Your thoughts, Brandie, is the paranormal at its peak in the mainstream?
For me, being new, I am fairly new in this field as far as, putting myself out there. So I've been following the paranormal field, and I'd say over the last 8 years, I've been following it and watching. I only see growth. I really do. I just see that I'm seeing a lot of light workers coming forward too. I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to learn more about their own abilities and their ability to connect to the spirit realm. I'm seeing a lot of people who are interested in the science, and learning about these tools that are available to them. So I'm seeing a lot of excitement and positive coming in around the paranormal field. So I see growth.
Carin, you get final word on this in about 60 seconds. How about that?
I agree with Brandie on the fact that there's a lot of new people coming into the field with new ideas. Catholicism was huge for so many years, and people are bringing new ideas, new religions, new beliefs. So there is that growth. Some people think it's good. Some people think it's not great at all. But on the other side, I think there's a lot of people that got into this field once you had shows like Ghost Adventures and things like Conjuring. I think you had a lot of people get into the field. People wanted to start their own radio shows and write books and try to get on TV and try to get their shows and their groups out there for the chance at a quick fame. And I think now that it's so saturated on TV and on radio, I think, networks are going to stop pushing those shows a lot because it's been so overdone. And I think you'll see the people who aren't in it for the right reasons, once they see that opportunity is not what it used to be, I think some of those people will drop off.
All right, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We are with Carin Smurl, Brandie Wells, and Everett Themer on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We are hopping out for our first break of the night. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about if it were to develop, how or what would have to be done in the paranormal to bring true unity and a true code of conduct to the forefront. Is it possible? No idea, but we'll find out right after this with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, This is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruse, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you'd like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Gary Parker is going to join us. We're going to talk about the alien message and the contact that he has involving Egypt. It's going to be very interesting indeed. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Ecdesiast. Ecdesiast is your password. Nobody knows what it means, but Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow me on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. You could give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us for live chat in the SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our brand new YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. We'd love for you to subscribe to that. And our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Read The Encounter online. Great stories on there, as well as you can also watch great video viewing from Contact TV and UFO Seekers and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. We're talking the paranormal tonight. Is it time for a paranormal code of conduct in ghost hunting? It's a little bit of an anarchic way of doing things since there is really no rules. Museums, hotels, places getting busted up because people are showing no respect for the place they are investigating. It's becoming problematic, at least it is here on the West Coast. For hour number 2, we are joined by Carin Smurl, Brandie Wells, and Everett Themer. Everyone, welcome back.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
So in my article that I wrote, it was really about how do you set this up? If you were in a paranormal investigation and this was something that you wanted to help set up, that's the big question a lot of people have, Carin, when it comes to this. Everybody says, like you said at the end of hour number 1, you said you were talking about this 10 years ago, and this discussion is one that just won't go away. So if you were to set it up, what would you do?
Well, first I have to ask this because I have to admit I did not read the blog. I did not read the blog, Dave. I'm sorry. I did not.
Oh, I'll forgive you this time.
I didn't. So when you're talking, because we've touched on different things. We've touched on different, different techniques and beliefs and, things like that. But when we talk about code of conduct, are you specifically talking about the code of conduct and how are investigators supposed to carry themselves, act, that type of thing? Or are we also talking about standards as far as investigating, evidence, how to do things and what this means and things like that?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you would have to build an organization, that would be able to clamor on to some sort of education, some sort of set of rules and guidelines on how to investigate, on rules and guidelines on how to be professional. I mean, let's face it, there are people out there who go into an investigation still in their work clothes, or they go into someone's house and they don't even think about taking their shoes off. It doesn't sound like much, but it's about setting a professionalism to it. I mean, my God, I'll tell you right now, the reason why I thought about this, and it is one of the dumbest reasons why I would think about something like this, but this is somehow gives you an inkling on how my mind works. So I'm scrolling through YouTube on Friday night, wondering what I'm going to write my blog about on Saturday, because I write my blog every Saturday. And then it's published on Monday on our website, spacedoutradio.com. And as I'm scrolling through YouTube, for some reason, I come across, or pardon me, it was Facebook, I come across a live feed of the American Cornhole Association having its championship matches. And you know what cornhole is, where you take the bean bags and then you
right.
throw them up the ramp and try and get them in the hole. Okay? And here I'm thinking, if a bunch of people can put together a National Cornhole Association, why the hell can one not be made for the paranormal? And you know, I combine that with, I was started thinking of the UFC, which I brought up earlier, and, you know, I can't help it. I'm a sports guy, I'm a competitive guy, and this is how my mind works. But cripes, guys, if there can be an American Cornhole Association and a championship for cornhole of all things, and don't even get me started on professional mini golf, which I know is down there. Okay? It's ridiculous that there isn't something in the paranormal field that doesn't create some sort of rules, guidelines, education system for people wanting to conduct paranormal investigation or tours, Carin. That's where I'm getting at.
Well, now that you said that, I'm just going to go on your cornhole example here, because I've played that, you know, in the summer. You'd play that at barbecues, and, you know, you're having a couple drinks with your friends, hot dogs, hamburgers, that kind of thing. I mean, something like that is just simple. There's a few rules. You know, you get 1 point for this, 2 points for that, 3 points for that. If you miss, you get no points. Now, we're talking about a field. If you were to start with Code of Conduct, as far as rules and manners, I mean, I believe Brandie and Everett both said this at the beginning of the show. I mean, that part of it's common sense. I mean, honestly, I grew up, my mom and dad taught me manners, taught me respect. You know, I'm 39 years old, and if my mom saw me disrespecting my neighbor's property or disrespecting somebody, she'd still smack me right in the mouth. You know what I mean? I was taught manners. You know, how to act when I go into somebody's house. How do I go into a property that doesn't belong to me? You know, common sense things that we should already know. Unfortunately, some people don't. So, I mean, you know, you don't litter, you don't get drunk and smash people's stuff that doesn't belong to you, that type of stuff. I mean, that should be common sense. We shouldn't have to teach that to people, unfortunately. But in this society, you know, obviously we still do. The second part of it, the standards, as far as investigating and how do we treat evidence, I mean, that's just a huge bear in itself. You know, people send me pictures all the time. Hey, do you see anything in this picture? What do you think? Just a piece of evidence like a photo can cause the hugest debate. And I've seen people literally fight and bully each other and call each other names over their opinions on a photo. I actually got bullied myself right off of a page. I couldn't believe it. Somebody put me in this paranormal group. They had like 41,000 followers. There was a photo on there, and it said, what did everybody think? Anybody who gave an opinion other than what the person who posted it, the guy who ran the page, literally he tore them to shreds. I was like, oh, I don't see that. This is what I see. And I was very nice. I always am. He literally belittled me, called me names. His followers had just literally ripped me to shreds, and then I was blocked and deleted from the post. I guess like a week later he found out who I was, and he tried to apologize, and I was just like, please, you know? I was like, I was just simply giving my opinion on a photo, Dave, on a photo. So could you imagine, like, trying to put a standard on, like, was that really an EVP or was that not an EVP? Or how do we structure that? How do we put a standard on evidence across the board? I don't think you could get people to agree on something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think it's so much about evidence. At least for me, it wouldn't be.
all right, because I know what it's like to have a photo absolutely blown up on Facebook. I believe you saw the photo, Carin, of what we posted from our museum back in September of the gentleman on the stairs. And some of the comments that we got on that they were laughable. They really were, but that's neither here nor there. I understand completely where you are going with that. I don't think right now it's as much about evidence as going back to the basics in regards to teaching people that etiquette. You know, that you don't sit in someone's good furniture with your investigation clothes. If you're in someone's house, you ask them, you know, if you're going to be running in and out of the house, do you mind if I keep my shoes on? You know, things like that. There is a politeness factor and just a pure etiquette factor that goes along with that. And then investigative techniques. I realize the way I investigate is going to be different than all three of you. And if there was 10 other people standing behind us, it would be different from all 10 of them. You know, it's about finding that common denominator on how to put this together. So, Brandie, I'm going to ask you here in regards to it. If you were to set something like this up, what would you have to see in it?
Well, if you go to policies on my website, this is what I require. Must be 18 to attend or have an ID with a signed waiver if you are 16 to 18 years of age. You must sign waivers for filming and attending. No taunting, come sober, stay sober. No crossing over spirits. Abide by rules of the location first and foremost. And I also ask that no one leaves my event without notifying me first. I've actually had people just leave, and then I'm like looking all over our property for someone thinking, did they pass out? Are they lost? Are they in a closet? So it's a little strange rule, but it's one I had to add, you know, and that's the other thing about rules is you're going to end up having to make things up as you go, and then you start creating more resistance. So I really feel if there was a code of conduct, I wouldn't even call it that. This is like a form of the golden rule that we're really searching for, and it's an outline of expected behaviors to start creating, I'd say, accountability for people who are trying to keep high standards in the field. So it would just weed the garden. You know, it would weed out the people who are in it just to, you know, party, have fun, and, you know, go to these really amazing places and, you know, get scared, like Carin was saying, or, you know, it would start separating people. So, you know, once again, I'm still divided with it, to be honest with you. I mean, the topic is, there are so many variables.
Everett, what's your thoughts? If you were to start it out, what would you see would have to be an advent of it?
Well, I think one of the things we need to do, and you had said it, is step away from going, what would I do? Because, like you said, everybody investigates differently, and everybody honestly believes that their way is the best, correct, only way to do it. If it were me, and this is a long, drawn-out process, but you would have to find one, or one really good group would have to step up and just begin. Do it the right way, and then try and recruit other groups to follow their lead, and slowly, over time, I don't know how they would get them to stay under their wing or stay associated with them, whether it be to develop some sort of educational classes or something that these groups can get as a bonus or as a reason for staying associated. But I think it's not going to be done when we sit here and talk about how I would do it or how any one individual person would do it. I think it's going to have to be an investigation group really taking the lead, and I think it's going to take years. I honestly don't know that it's even possible, but I think that if somebody really stepped up and treated this, I don't want to say like a science, but like a field, and not only set out the rules, but then began to collect the evidence and try and promote sort of a credibility of the field that would help draw the genuinely interested teams into what they're doing to benefit from it. And that would slowly, hopefully, spread across the field. That's honestly the only way that I can see this happening, short of somebody convincing state governments to begin regulating ghost hunting. And how do you do that?
But that's my point. Everett, you just hit the nail on the head with the point that I was making last hour in regards to the fact that if there is destruction that continues in counties, in municipalities up here in Canada, in provinces and states, if the ghost hunting community doesn't get its act together, my concern is, and I might be a little bit overbearing here, I don't know, tell me if I am, okay, but my concern is that eventually when things start going bad, the government usually steps in and says, if you guys aren't going to regulate yourselves one way or another, we'll either put an end to it or we'll regulate it for you. And I could see that happening in the ghost hunting community because it is anarchic.
But how do you regulate it? Here in Illinois, we have what's called the Department of Professional Regulations. And basically for, I think, about 100 different occupations, you have to take tests to show that you meet certain qualifications. Everything from pharmacy technicians to real estate agents and brokers to doctors. And they have to take these tests issued by the state to meet these certain requirements. But we can't even decide on what the educational or investigation requirements and standards are for the field. So how do we test for it to determine what the qualifications are and who meets them?
And I see your point there, and I'm going to raise you a Pepsi because you know I like my Pepsis. All right? Here's my thinking, and I will absolutely love to hear your guys' comments. In my blog, what I basically said was, what has to happen is that one of these giant ghost hunts or ghost hunting conferences that they have either on the East Coast, I know there's a big one in Vegas, okay? What has to happen is people in that organization have to bring a bunch of people together, okay, to say, okay, let's see if we can do this. Okay, and you take registrations of team names, those who want to register, because eventually teams will filter on in. Eventually, if you get it right. And then what you would have to do is, of course, you would have to take the opinions of everybody. What would you like to see here? Okay, then it goes to a vote on who a governing body would be. Now, I do agree with you, Everett, that it would take years to set up. This is not something that happens in a one-weekend affair. This is something that is going to take time. This is something that would take years to put together. So, Carin, I'm curious about your opinion. If that's the way that I see it starting, do you see it starting differently along those lines?
No. Again, I've seen it. A spark of that. I've seen it kind of start to happen a few times, slowly and in small spurts, and it kind of just fizzles out. I've seen like, oh, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to send out these forms, and people are going to register. We're going to get everybody's names, and everyone's going to have a background check, and it, it's like, okay, great, we're waiting for it, and a month goes by and nothing. So. I just don't see it happening. Unfortunately, I just don't, Dave. I don't have much to say except I just don't see it happening.
What about this? What if you were, to turn it around and say, what if these locations were to hold the standards and I'm just talking about this because there's one location in particular, and most people know of it. It's the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion. And they have so much investigating there that they have their own whole standards that you have to abide by in order to investigate in their house no matter what. And they're rules that I have no problem following. A lot of other people do because it's pretty strict. But what if the accountability and what if these locations were holding that code of conduct, and these were like the suggested locations for, I don't know, I guess like creating this database of.
But can you know what I'm saying? How does that apply to the average person who has something going on in their home and they're afraid maybe they don't have a code of conduct that they think people should live up to because they're not familiar really with the field?
Right. Yeah, I was looking from the other direction. That's me. I'm always looking from like 20 different angles. But
that's
for me,
why it's hard. You have to look at it from all those angles. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's just so many angles to look at it from. It's endless.
It's not the game of cornhole, basically, is what we're saying.
Yes.
I understand that, and I got a question coming in from Ron, and Carin, we'll start with you on this one. Ron says, the paranormal fad presently is a moneymaker for many. The control and influence into the mainstream sets credibility through exposure via social media and broadcast and print media, along with assorted entertainment venues. Professional paranormal code of conduct should never be achieved until these cheese factors are removed. What would it not make sense then to disassociate paranormal from scientific persona to identifying under a new name and identity? Then you create a code of conduct to your standards. Carin, what do you think?
So he's talking about creating a whole new field and not the field of paranormal investigating. That's what it sounds like to me.
That's what it sounds like.
He wants to break off from all this mainstream ghost adventures, and kind of start fresh and start a whole new field. But that's an interesting question, because how do you do that? I mean, it's not like you're still going to be, the same people are still going to be involved. You're still going to be doing the same type of work and still doing the same type of investigating. Not sure how that would work. I have to think about that one.
Yeah, that's a pretty...
but it's very mainstream, and we have all of this. And I think that's where a lot of the bad taste comes from. It's not the people who are out there doing it right. It's the mainstream nonsense that brings in these people that want to get drunk and do the hey, let's go ghost hunting. Real paranormal investigators are insulted when you call them ghost hunters. I'm not a ghost hunter. I'm not out hunting ghosts and trapping them and bringing them home. I'm an investigator. I'm out there to investigate. Is it paranormal? Is it not? Is there another issue going on? So I mean, there has to be this separation between the people who are serious and the people who are out in it just because it's a popular thing to do. And how do you do that?
I fully agree with you. How do you do that? That is the big mystery. Everett.
Maybe you can answer this for me. There used to be, and I actually looked at their website and contacted them at one point, the American Parapsychological Association. Do they still even exist? I went to their website a while back and never got a response. But it seems like somebody like that, where they had what appeared to be a relatively diverse group of academics mixed with some investigators, they should be really spearheading something like this. And I think they could bring the idea to the forefront. But I haven't heard a word about or from them in years. Do they even still exist? Is that a case of somebody tried to do this and it just fell apart because they couldn't get the support?
Could very well be.
I haven't heard that name in years. You're right.
I haven't heard about anything. The website was still active as of maybe 6-8 months ago, but I did send them a letter. I had some questions I wanted to interview somebody from them about, and no response, no recent posts. It's just like they've kind of faded away.
Maybe funding, and somebody's just keeping the website going on a smaller scale. Could be. Could very well be. But let's take this in a different direction here, guys, because we can sit here and say how this is going to be put together. And once again, I'm stating point blank, I am not, as part of Spaced Out Radio, putting together this thing. I got bigger fish to fry right now than worrying about putting together a paranormal code of conduct. It is a topic of discussion. If you want to read my blog, go to spacedoutradio.com, click on news, and then go to Dave's blog. It's right there. And I would love to get your reaction on it after you read it. All right? So the whole point that we're getting at here is there are do's and don'ts of what needs to be done, whether it's on a professional level or on a investigative level. And those are two big fronts that a lot of people are not taking very seriously because there is no rules and guidelines. Brandie, you have a list of rules and guidelines for the tours that you do, and you're pretty set in your guidelines. But you obviously are also asking a number of questions due to those guidelines. What are some of the questions your tourists are asking you as to why you have certain rules in place?
Actually, in your, what do you call it?
Facebook page?
Live chat. Someone was asking, no crossing over. You don't allow crossing over. I don't. Actually, a lot of locations don't. And I feel it's a very sacred act to cross someone over. And I don't feel it should be done as, the thing about the event is it is definitely a form of entertainment. That is the entertainment form of my business. Yes, I am teaching people their own skills, abilities. I do bring in scientific people. I'm bringing in, but it really is a form of entertainment. You're learning. You are socializing. You get to explore these gorgeous, amazing historic locations. You get the entire historic backdrop. So it is a form of entertainment, but at the same time, we are doing something sacred. So I do bring everyone to a place of being grounded, clear, and open. I see it as a spiritual act to open yourself to the spirit realm. And we talk a lot about energy and how we are fields of energy. So when I'm pulling all of these different elements in, and there are a lot of people who come that they've only seen what they see on TV. And so they show up at an event and they think that all these things are just going to pop up around them, which is hilarious. They think they're going to go to a investigation. I'm sure you've seen this, Carin, as well, where, people have this expectation that, all these things are going to start just happening. And it takes hours to really get to that place, of being grounded, clear, open. And you never know when spirit is going to start working with you or, and deciphering, was that real? Was it, so anyhow, when I start doing all these things, when I initially started, I think I had 3 rules, and one was no taunting. And 18 and over and some other rule. But as I started doing more of these events over the last few years, I was like, okay, I can't have people trying to cross over spirit. I mean, that's a sacred thing to me. So that's why I do that. It's sacred. That's my belief. When I go into a home and I'm trying to do some healing work with spirit or it's different because I'm coming from mediumship, a place of, spirituality and mediumship. So it's probably a different perspective than someone else who is purely investigating. I try to be really open to all of it. I don't believe everything that, if somebody's arm was touched, are you sure it was touched, or was there some static electricity going on? So I try to be open, but I'm also highly sensitive. And I've created rules as I go because I'm realizing more and more coming in around having to create those rules. I think someone showed up with a 12-year-old one time, and I actually asked them to leave. I felt like it was inappropriate for a 12-year-old to be at an investigation because I hadn't been there before, and I didn't know, what to expect. So age is another thing. I'm curious what you guys think about ages with going into investigating.
I know on my tour we allow kids as young as 12 as long as they're with a parent, but we always have our group monitors monitoring the children. I wouldn't allow a bunch of 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds to run around on their own without a parent available, so I am okay with that.
Yeah.
Carin?
I think that if I was going to say, if you don't mind me adding, it's just, this is like a perfect example. Brandie, please don't hate me. I know I disagreed with you before.
Yeah.
I know. And Dave knows me. Dave knows me pretty well. I speak my mind. And I really never try to be disrespectful. And I'm not. God, please, I trust me, I'm not. But I'm just from what you're telling me to what I see and what I experience, that's why I'm trying to give these examples, because I had brought up the thing before about charging. And, you explained why you charge, and some of those things are fine. But just something like that alone, that is such a huge divide that you could never, get everybody to come to grips with. Some people will just be like, oh, my God, that's so wrong, you're crazy. And some people are like, oh, I totally understand. And the example that you just gave, love your list. It's great. Everything on that list, I completely agree with. Now, I've been to a lot of places over the years, historical locations. That rule that you have, you said, oh, it might be silly to have that rule about not crossing people over. That is such a common rule. I hear it all the time at every historic location I go to. That's one of their top rules.
Yeah.
Every single person, before the tour, they say, here's our rules. We're going to go over them again, and every time somebody says no crossing over, every single person is like, what are they, nuts? That is the most ridiculous rule. Now, I agree with you in the fact that it is a sacred thing. First of all, not many people know how to do it anyway. So to kind of put that out as a rule, most people would be like, I don't even know how to do that. I wouldn't know what to do anyway. So, it's whatever. But for people who do, for people that are sensitive, for people who have spirits come to them like myself and people that I work with, we kind of see that as an insult, because we're and it's not the rule itself. It's the fact that you said, okay, this is for entertainment too. It's somewhere to come and learn. From a perspective of someone who is out in the field trying to get spirits to a place of peace, or to help a family get rid of spirits or help spirits move on, we see that as almost like a circus, a sideshow. Who are, not you specifically, but for the people who make that role, who are you to say that you can't cross someone over? It's not why do you think it's okay to keep them here for entertainment purposes?
Yes,
it is not, spirits aren't here for, you know what I'm saying? So that's how people see it. People are like, they're not here for our entertainment. There's somebody that maybe is stuck here. Maybe they're sad. Maybe they had a tragic death. Maybe they're lost. Maybe they need help. And you're keeping them here to have people, so from that perspective, is just giving people listening an example as to how people could agree or disagree on certain things. You're looking at it one way and you're right. And then that somebody else is looking at it another way, saying that this is how they see it and they're right. So we even have things like this that we can't agree on, not you and I, but in the field. So there's just, again, it comes back to there's just so many variables. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I agree.
It's just trying to get everybody on the same page is so impossible, because everybody's beliefs are so different.
Well, I can tell you this. We have gone over with a medium to every spirit in our museum that we know of, that we have found, and only one has asked if they could cross over, but they said not right now, they're not ready. They will let us know when they are ready.
Absolutely.
So I mean, we have absolutely done that at our museum. But when you're working location to location, like Brandie is, I kind of understand where she's going. with it, but I mean, Brandie would know, and I'm sure, Brandie, correct me if I'm wrong, that if a spirit came up to you being a psychic medium and a spirit said, look, I don't want to do these types of tours anymore, I want to be crossed over, I'm pretty sure you would do it.
Yes. I do cross over spirit. And so I'm not saying that I don't believe in it or that, honestly, it's when I'm running these events. I just feel like it's, about like respect and mainly to the location. It really is. And I also feel that the people who are coming in and learning this and having these experiences, I don't want them. So what happens is I have these groups, and it's called the 555 because I have 5 different groups, and they're not always with a sensitive or a psychic. So I just wouldn't want someone to come in and try to do something like that and not really know the foundation of, the safety of opening energy and, so it is very complex. And I
absolutely
hear you.
I agree.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree with you on when you were talking about how some people I actually had someone completely attack me online, because online I don't know, sometimes people are so vicious online. But I was completely attacked, saying how, it was along those lines, like, this is almost like a form of torture to these spirits for you to, come in and, but the places that I've been going, especially the SK Pierce, they're very interactive, the spirits there, and they actually love and enjoy people coming in. So it's not all spirit is being viewed that way. And I think people don't understand that a lot of these haunted locations, like these spirits are at peace and they actually enjoy the interaction. They want to tell their story.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. So
I agree.
it's kind
100%.
of, it's neat.
But that's just it's just an example of how people see that, they just take it so many different ways. And you're absolutely right. I've been to some horrible, horrible places where some spirits are like, get me out of here.
Right.
And then there's other spirits in the same building who are just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We have a ghost named...
Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize. We have a ghost named Mary in one of our buildings, and she's a young lady. She was a prostitute back in the early to mid-1800s who was killed. I think we haven't figured out how she died. Okay, but she is in one of the rooms in a building we call the post house. And one of the things she said recently in our investigation is... it was a barren room. There was nothing in there besides a chair. And she actually requested a bed. And we got a bed put in there for her.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, it is about, like, the people who run the museum up here, which I'm part of the society, okay, they are very, very inclined to do whatever the spirit asks them. They want them to know this is their home. They're here 24/7, and we just come and go as we please. So the way they react, if we get something in our tour from a spirit, they react right away. And the next time I went in that building, which was 2 weeks later, there was a cot in there for it, and there was a pillow there.
That's cool.
For her.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is respect that needs to be shown on the other way. But what would you, if Carin or Everett, you haven't spoken in a while, forget what your voice sounds like. If you were to say, Everett, choose your top 3 items of what you would like to see in any sort of paranormal coalition or association, what would it be, both on the business side and on the investigation side?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I think first you have to differentiate between paranormal investigation and paranormal events. And in terms of investigations, I would like to see people begin to collect, do more with their evidence. But to do that, they have to have the right tools. To have the right tools, they have to have some form of training. I think what we need to do is really push the idea to the paranormal investigation groups, maybe not the tourism or the event groups, but the idea that they need to understand the tools that they're using and have a variety of different tools. And then I would like to see these groups, it all goes back to common sense, and so many people don't have common sense. I would like to see them start treating their investigations more seriously. Let's start eliminating and calling out the groups that are going in on a investigation and showing up inappropriately, whether it be, inappropriately dressed, because let's face it, some of ghost hunting is a fashion show. There's sort of a lifestyle to it. And, there are those people
hold on. You're not talking about the paranormal gangsta, are you?
Oh, you could pick her. You could pick, let's face it. There is a large group of the paranormal investigators who try and mimic the appearance of many of the well-known television ghost hunter presenters. And I think I would like to see people have an outlet or a venue where they could get some information and some education and move away from what they see on TV. I think that would be the most important step. Just move away from the paranormal entertainment and go back to, again, I hate to use the word sciences, but go back to the fundamentals and get an understanding of sociology and psychology and environmental factors. I've seen so many cases where what they think is a spirit knocking on their wall is a heat duct expanding and contracting in the evening or overnight. So let's go back to learning some basics. I think that would be the key.
Carin, what would be your top three for on a business association side and an investigative side?
Okay. Well, I don't know if I could pick three, but I agree with everything Everett just said. One huge thing that I can add is if we're going to have people on a list, like in a directory of some sort, especially when it comes to investigating homes. Well, look, historic locations too, because let's face it, we all have to be around these people. I think, you need to be, if you're going to be registered on this list, you need to have a background check, period. I think that is huge. And I'll tell you a couple reasons why. If you're going into someone's home, do you really want a sex offender around your children? No. Do you want somebody who maybe was just arrested for a violent offense, whether it be a fight or, domestic violence? Do you want somebody like that in your home? Or someone that was just arrested on a drug or alcohol charge? Maybe they have an addiction problem. Do you want any of those types of people around your family? Or do you want to be in a room with somebody like that at 2:00 in the morning at a haunted location? I don't. And especially if you're going to have, especially like you guys said, you allow 12-year-olds. If you're going to have children that young, absolutely. I mean, I think you absolutely should. Now, if you're going to have a public event, that might be a little bit different. You are letting in the public. Okay, that might be handled a little bit different. But if you're literally going to be part of a group and you're going to call yourself a paranormal investigator, I think you absolutely need to have a background check, period. Period. Before anybody lets you in anywhere.
But who does that background check?
Up here, it's the RCMP.
I don't...
but I mean,
yeah, I mean...
There'd have to be a governing body to monitor,
that's what I'm saying.
verify, and collect.
Well,
Yeah.
See, up
I'm
here...
saying if...
Up here,
if
let me
this was
Carin,
established.
let me just get this in for a second. Up here, Everett, because in order to coach sports up here in Canada, you have to have a criminal background check done through the RCMP. The RCMP then hands you a certified letter that is signed and you take that back to your association, whether it's baseball, soccer, football, hockey, whatever it could be, and you take that to the association, or the RCMP will directly fax that to the association that your background check has been done. So yes, I don't know what it's like down there, but up here the Mounties do a great job on making it a very simple process.
But it still comes back down to sort of a governing association. And we can't seem to form one of those.
Well, I think that's what Dave was asking, though. If we were able to do that, what would we want to see? Is that what you were asking? Like,
yes,
if
indeed.
this is something that we were able to put together. Okay, right. And they do have that. I'm in Pennsylvania, and if you want to coach a sport, it doesn't matter if it's t-ball or soccer or high school basketball. You also have to have a child abuse history, clearance, and a background check and a drug screening a lot of the times to do that as well. So it's the same here. It's just through usually like the state police or whoever does that. But and I believe also what Eric said or what Everett said about different techniques. Not have like a class, so to speak, but just go back to the basics. What type, like just some type of course, how to properly use equipment that you might be using. Like you said before, Dave, proper etiquette as far as being in public locations and people's homes. I mean, those are the top three things. Know what you're doing, know what equipment you're using and why, what techniques, what they're for, more of a scientific basis or a starting point. Also the, proper etiquette and, of course, like I said, the criminal clearances. Absolutely. Those three are definitely the key to getting it off the ground.
I like it a lot. All right, Brandie, we got about 5 minutes for you here before we're going to say goodnight to you. But, what do you think? What would be your top three in putting an association together, and what you would like to see for a top three in investigative technique?
I actually liked what you were saying, Carin, about background check, because I'm really careful about who I allow to come in, but I can't afford to do background checks for everyone that comes in, and I don't have a formal team. Like I said, I pull in different people for different events, but I'm really careful about who I allow in. I think I know them, but it did get me thinking. But that actually brought me to insurance. Really, if you are going into someone's home, if you are in a historic location, if you're inviting the public in, I have insurance. And that's for my own protection, but it's also for the protection of the people that I'm inviting in. So would that be part of my top three? Maybe. My biggest rule is being respectful, no taunting spirit, being respectful to those that you're with. That's a big one for me. And I guess my other one, I'm right up there with, knowing your tools, knowing your, gaining knowledge, like getting the basics so that you know and understand, I guess, just the basics, knowing the basics. I think that's really important. So those, I've talked about other rules that I have, but I think those are the top three that I'd like to kind of throw out there. But I do question though, how would this ever come to fruition if there isn't a governing body? And how would we ever determine that governing body? Who's in charge, and where would the funding come from? So it does make me wonder if there's ever a way to form some sort of a board or association where people buy in to keep this accountability and weed the garden.
Well, I think any type of association would have to be dealt with in some sort of, you're going to have to get 30 to 50, maybe even 100 groups into a room, at one of these giant paranormal or UFO conferences. Let's face it, the perfect example of all of this is MUFON. Whether you love or hate MUFON doesn't matter. The idea behind it is they've been able to make state directors, provincial directors, to all come under the organization, where everybody pays a certain fee, to be a part of it on an annual basis. That's where your funding comes from. I would totally say that it would be possible. Would you need someone to jump on it and, maybe a financial backer who's, maybe a ghost hunter who has some deep pockets to help out? Sure, you'd probably need that. That would be something that would be probably intact. But, I do think it is doable if it was done properly. Question is, what's done properly? Because my done properly is much different than everybody here who's listening. Everett?
I agree. In fact, I think we could all sit down and write books on the proper way to investigate, and we could all publish our books, and different people would buy them, and we're all obviously going to have differences. Are we right? Are we wrong? We're all going to have our followers. It's very hard to unite anybody, especially when you're looking at essentially across a continent with a field that we really can't, we have no definites in the field. So how do we do that? How do we unite all these people? And using MUFON as an example and kind of transferring that over to ghost hunting, so to speak, maybe, like I said before, over time, if the right group did the right things and slowly converted more and more groups, it's possible. But I don't think it's realistic. It would have to be somebody very dedicated, not so much to ghost hunting or paranormal investigations, but almost give that up to spend their time forming this alliance or council or however you want to phrase it to get people united.
Carin, I'm going to get you to hold on because you are coming with us for hour number 3 here, but Brandie does have to get going here. Brandie, quick shout out, if you don't mind, your website where people can find your tours.
Sure. I, first and foremost, am a psychic medium, a clairvoyant, and I book appointments by phone, Skype, or in person in Keene, New Hampshire, and you can go to brandiewells.com. It's BRANDIE wells.com. And I also love my paranormal work. You can go to 555paranormal.com. I'm starting to pull in the 2018 season, and my focus next year is theaters, historic theaters throughout New England. So if you ever want to check out one of my events, go to 555paranormal.com. And thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation. Intriguing.
Thank you as well, Brandie. Yeah. You guys hold on. We are going to step out for our final break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. Carin's sticking around. Everett's sticking around. We're getting the preacher, Coop, and his beard, and Corey Rees coming in to talk more about the paranormal in hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. We will be right back with more SOR right after this.
We are getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop, on the final Monday of every month. you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, Gary Parker is going to join us, talk about the alien message that he got through listening and studying Egypt. It's a very interesting topic nonetheless. We're going to get going at spacedoutradio.com tomorrow night. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Ecdesiast. Ecdesiast is your password. Nobody knows what it means, but it is your password for the night. So be sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with us during the show. We're also on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Group. If you want to chat live, our page is Spaced Out Radio Show. We're on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. We have a brand new YouTube channel we'd love for you to sign up for. It's called Spaced Out Radio, no longer Spaced Out Radio Show, so make sure you subscribe to that. And you can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot. You guys can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read The Encounter online, or you can watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight, we are talking about the paranormal, whether or not there should be a code of conduct. Now, a lot of people in the paranormal field say yes. Many say absolutely not. So in hour number 3 here, we have added to Carin Smurl and Everett Themer with Eric Cooper from S4 and Force Moon Paranormal. From S4 and Spaced Out Radio, our resident scientist, Eric Markham, and Corey Rees from S4 and Force Moon Paranormal as well. Everyone, thank you so much for continuing on here and taking over the next shift in hour number 3. Appreciate that.
Oh,
Nice job, Dave.
Yeah, now it's a party.
Game on.
I want to start off with a question from Andrew on Twitter. And he is asking, is a paranormal investigators organization critical, especially if there are legal ramifications? And, you know, let's start off with you, Carin, on this one, because, you know, it's pretty much what we've been talking about in the last hour.
And are there legal ramifications if something happens while they're investigating? Is that the question?
Exactly. Example.
Well, I mean, there should be. If we're talking about things like we were talking about before, you know, I don't think they mean trespassing like we were talking about earlier. I don't think that's what they're talking about. You know, my biggest concern is, I mean, again, there's a big difference if you're going into a historic location and if you're going into someone's home. You know, think about it this way, Dave. You asked us earlier, you said, you know, do you foresee anything happening in the future where a paranormal team or the paranormal field could be taken to court? The best example I always give is if you're in someone's home, think about a child. Something happens to a child, everybody just goes off the deep end. You know, I mean, that's just and rightfully so. But imagine a group going into a home and harm being done to a child. We talked about background checks before. God forbid there's a sexual predator in a group, or, God forbid somebody tries to do some ritual on a child and this child gets hurt in some way. Or even if the child gets hurt because the lights are out and they're investigating. If something like that were to happen, I mean, the press would be all over that.
Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal and S4, what is your opinion on that?
Most definitely. I mean, my latest example where we had a quote-unquote paranormal entertainment team that rented and charged the public $300 a room at a historic hotel, and it turned into a drunken party during a quote-unquote investigation. These people got kicked out of this hotel. Nobody knows what happened to this supposed, all this $300 per room that they took in. That money disappeared. So now you have all these other teams that have actually been to this site. Do you think anyone's ever going to be allowed to go back to the site? No. So should there be ramifications? Most definitely. Another example, another team, quote unquote, that we have locally. Where, all these different teams have gone to this one cemetery. One team went and stole a flask off a casket or off a tombstone, and completely disrespected the whole cemetery. And so now no teams can go there after dark because of one team. Should there be ramifications? Most definitely. Hands down. Should there be a code of ethics? Most definitely. Now, where I do differ from you, Dave, should we dictate what kind of EMF meter so-and-so uses? No, I don't agree with that. I'm all about professionalism and ethics. That's where I stand with it.
And I agree. There has to be some ethics and there has to be some consideration for what have you. But Eric Markham, we could also say that there is a real lack of standard because a lot of people, and I bring your scientific background in here, a lot of people, as we have talked numerous times on this show, don't really truly understand what science really means in this field.
Yeah, a lot. One of the problems I have with the whole thing is maybe we're dwelling too much on calling it science and not enough on just setting out just some bare, like it was said previously, just some standard common sense rules. You don't track mud through people's houses. You don't say we're here to do a scientific study unless you really are, if you really are trying to get some scientific data. The whole idea of standards, it just ought to be more like, anybody remember Underwriters Laboratories? People used to, if you were UL listed, that was a sign of quality. I think we need to set up a governing body that's on a voluntary basis. You have to adhere to a certain amount, a certain set of rules, and then you get the underwriter's label or whatever. Would be more of a voluntary thing. But yeah, don't go in saying that we're doing science just because we're waving K2 meters around. We're doing scientific research. That chaps my butt, as we all know. I think there is science involved. Mm-hmm. I think it's time that some more scientists like myself get into the field and start applying, instead of just griping about, actually getting in there and trying to apply some science to the field.
Corey Ruiz,
it's not going to take too many times before we get something.
I get that, preacher. I'm going to bring Corey in here right now. Corey Ruiz from S4. You're relatively new to the paranormal field, but you got a pretty good teacher in Eric Cooper. I'm wondering, when you look at the field with your own eyes and not the FMP eyes, what do you see as a newcomer to this field or relative newcomer to this field that absolutely amazes you, but also on the flip side, jaw drops you that it's actually happening?
Oh, wow. Jaw drops me that it's happening is just the absolute disrespect, the chaos. The amazing part of it is the teams that go in for the actual purpose of helping people, spirits, and so on. But, the biggest thing is that you've got so many of these teams that have no code, no ethics, and they're just doing some really, really wrong stuff. And I think that, as Cooper said, I don't think we should necessarily be telling people, what kind of equipment they have to use or what specifically how they have to investigate. Some people don't like to use a psychic when they investigate. Others like to use a psychic when they investigate. That part there, I don't really care about so much. What I care about is that, as we've stated, there's a code of conduct and ethics which, in all reality, not only protects you but the clients as well. And it's one of those things where it is that basic respect that so many seem to lack anymore, and it's being dressed appropriately, being respectful to the client when you're there, being polite, making sure that, their home or whatever property it is that you're on, that you're taking care of it as if it was your own. You're being cautious of it, and you're making sure that whatever you do is okay with your client. You don't go in drunk. You don't go in high. You don't go in intoxicated in any manner. Just some of the basic things that needs to happen. You see it, just absolute chaos. You see it all over the place happening. I mean, as Cooper brought up a little while ago, a group that went in, even on an entertainment side of it, and just tore a place up, made it a drunken party. I mean, they've just ruined that for anybody else who might be doing the entertainment part of it in an appropriate manner. They put a black eye on anything that says paranormal, and it's just awful.
You bring up a good point with the black eye, and Everett, I'm going to bring you in here on that. As we stated earlier in the show, it only takes a relative few to give a black eye to an entire field. How does the paranormal, in your opinion, then, Everett, police itself from these type of situations happening?
Well, I think that when it becomes known that a group has done something, whether it be trash a hotel or leave a client's house in shambles, I think the paranormal community itself has to come out against that and stand up and be vocal. As divided as we are, we attack each other, but we attack each other on sort of an immature, my stuff is better than your stuff, I'm right, you're wrong. We need to begin looking at these situations and addressing them in a professional way, and have multiple groups come out and say what this group did was wrong. And they need to put that on their Facebook pages. They need to begin posting things in groups. We really, in my opinion, we need to start calling out the other groups, and not just to each other, but making it known, not exactly in the media, but in the media would help. Making them known. I mean, we see these stories on psychics who get caught, fraudulently stealing money from people or making fake claims. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't the paranormal groups that are doing these things making news like that? We know it's happening, but why isn't it out there? And I think that's the one thing that maybe could kind of help unite different factions of the paranormal community, is if people started calling out these groups and calling each other out and holding ourselves up to standards.
Cooper?
Well, and we've kind of started doing that, and we've already started kind of what we call the West Coast Alliance, in which we have the WC Paranormal, we have the Spirit Ropers, we have And that's where I do differ in your definition of para-unity. To me, para-unity, for what we use, is being able to call on another team that has more tech if we need it, being able to call on another team, and the end result being the client is safe, the client's house is cleared. That to me is para-unity. And now here's where I somewhat disagree with you, Everett, in that you have to be real careful with the wording when you call another team out. You have to have your ducks in a row. You have to have documentation, or it's going to be a he said, she said, and you can go to court for slander. So what I did do today was went on social media on news sources, and I put out to the public, look, if you're needing help, here's what you look for in your team. Do they charge? If they charge or they ask for donations, there are teams out here that do it for free. Walk away. If they tell you that you have to leave your residence or you have to leave your property so that they can do an investigation because, oh my God, you might infringe. Oh, no. That's me raising red flags. Walk away. I called out all these things that these fringe groups are doing because there's teams out here that do it the right way. And to me, that's kind of putting out kind of like a PR to the public without calling out and getting ourselves in a legal bind if it comes down to it. It's education.
Carin, I'm curious to get your opinion on this because you've been doing this a long time and have been in this field more in the public eye than all of us combined. Have you ever called out people bluntly and blatantly for their investigative techniques, and has it worked?
I try not to, Dave. I try not to call people out specifically. That's I don't know. I will if it was okay. Honestly, if it was bad enough, you know me, and you know I would. If it was something that really warranted it, I would say, listen, I don't care what you people think. I need to get this out there. I definitely would. I've never run into that, fortunately, where it's gotten to the point. Like the guy said, I'm not gonna trash somebody because they're putting a photo out that they think has a ghost in it, or they're using a certain piece of equipment that I don't agree with. Absolutely not. That's not the kind of things you want to slam each other for. If it was something really bad, like if I had, a client, I did have a client come to me in the past and said, I worked with this group and they gave me their name, and I'm like, oh geez, they're only like 5 minutes from me. And I'm like, what happened? They told me this big story, and I'm like, oh God, and I addressed it with them and the guy who was in charge of the group, and I pretty much never recommended them again. Like, I will never recommend them to anybody. If anybody ever asks, I'll say absolutely not. But I would never go to social media and slam them unless it was warranted. If it was a crime or something awful, absolutely, I would do it in a heartbeat just to protect the public. But I absolutely agree with what he just said. As far as us, with what resources we have right now, that's absolutely the best way to kind of get the message to the public is to put things out there on social media, to put things out on our websites that say, here's the things you want to watch out for. That is the top thing that we can do right now. Because we don't have commercials on TV. The only way we can advertise is through social media, is through our websites. So to get those points out there to people, almost like a little, brochure, like, hey, if, these are red flags, or, this is what you should watch out for. This is how to protect yourself. That's probably the best thing that we can do right now. And I think it's a great idea. So keep that up. And, a lot of people come to me and ask for help, and I absolutely don't send them to anybody I don't trust. Even I'm on the West Coast or I'm on the East Coast. If a lot of people from the West Coast contact me, and it took me a long time to make contacts out there. Hey, if you guys let me know your pages, and, I'll let people know. But, I'm like, listen, I'm in Pennsylvania. I can't fly out there to California to help, but I will find somebody near you. Give me your zip code, and I'll find somebody I trust. So definitely networking and having people around the country you can trust is huge.
And that's a tough one, is to try and find that group that you can trust. Corey, Corey, you come in here as someone who works specifically with Forest Moon. How do you get someone to be trustworthy if they have never been around the field?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, what I'm saying here, and that question, and I apologize, came out totally wrong compared to what was translating in my brain here.
It's okay.
You being new to the field, would you feel comfortable giving someone advice, let's say, who contacts you in Texas or Ontario or wherever, in helping them find a group because you are new to the field, rather than, say, passing it off to Cooper or Carin or someone else?
Me personally, as somebody new, no. Because I don't know enough people out there. Basically, me being new into the field, I look to those who have been there a long time to give me the knowledge that I need for me to start figuring things out, to meet people and to make connections and whatever else that I need to do. I'm going to take something like that, and I have done it before. I'm going to take something like that, and I am going to pass it off to the person that I trust the most, who I see do things right, to say, hey, here's this person. They're looking for somebody. Who do you know? Can you find somebody? Because somebody like Cooper is going to know where to find that, who to look for. I don't, and I'm not afraid to admit that.
Well, Preacher, we bring you in here now as someone who has investigated, the paranormal in North Carolina. Have you ever had to turn people away from groups that you've dealt with in the past where they've come to you and said, look, I dealt with ABC group and I wasn't impressed. What was your opinion on that? Have you ever had that situation happen?
No, I'm usually the one that gets kicked out of the group because I don't swallow I don't drink the Kool-Aid, and I end up being the heavy a lot of times. And a lot of the biggest problem I saw with a lot of the groups that I was involved with is it was more of a social club. There wasn't a lot of professionalism. There was, it was hard to get somebody kicked out or suggest because they were just, the standards were so low for the most part.
Well, that brings up a good point, though. How do you raise the standards of what paranormal teams should be looking for? Because basically most teams start as just a bunch of friends getting together to create a new hobby because they all have an interest.
That's true. And I think like what Eric Cooper's doing with the Paranormal Initiative and with his alliances, it's going to be a gradual, stepwise thing. We just have to we have to do what we consider is doing it right and hope that some of these other groups will say, hey, look at them. And part of that might be getting some good evidence or getting some good science behind it. And some of the, the fringe groups that are just out there to get the EVP or whatever might start dropping out if people see there's a choice. That's the thing, present ourselves, put forward what like a corporation does with a mission statement and all that. Something to let people know we're taking it seriously. And maybe it'll just be a matter of attrition and the hobbyists will drop out.
Well, and that's kind of the thing we need to do is, it seems to me the hobbyists, and I'm talking locally here, because some of these unprofessional teams seem to be the loudest. They're the ones that the papers are going to because, well, they're just the crazy paranormal guys. And they're not professional. They're the ones that are telling people, yeah, you need to get out of here so we can investigate. And I'm sorry, but if you don't want your clients there, that tells me you're up to no good. Because personally, when it comes to what we do, I want the client there. The client can answer the questions. And if there's a spirit there, the spirit is going to be more comfortable with the client being there than just us as outsiders coming in. They're going to react.
One variation on that I would have is, I think, due to the susceptibility of small children, maybe one family member should be in attendance, but just
So that there's no spillover into the kids. You know, why don't you all go to Annie's house or go catch a movie while we're here? Or, you know, get the little ones out of there so they're not involved, because kids have enough nightmares already.
I agree.
Right, and I completely agree. The kids should be
some mature member of the family, some responsible adult member of the family needs to be at the house. It's protecting ourselves. You don't know. You go in there, tell everybody to go out, and the next thing you know, you're getting accused of stealing their $2 million Picasso that they probably didn't have to start with. You know, so
Exactly.
it's good to have us there.
Everett, I'm going to bring you in. Everett, I'm going to bring you in here for a quick second. You know, when it comes to having those guidelines per group, do you think enough teams, Everett, from what you have seen from an outsider's perspective, are doing enough to think about the rules, or do you think they're more interested in the ghost hunt than they are about, you know, actually thinking of what the effects are?
I think right now most of the teams out there are more interested in the ghost hunt. And you and I had a conversation the other day about packaging the message. And I think one of the things somebody, and you know, Eric with Forest Moon is really doing it the right way. You have to, we can talk about these standards all day, but ultimately you have to package the information in a way that other people are going to want to come to it. And, you know, if you package it right and you give these groups a benefit for forming an alliance with you and meeting your standards and raising their own bar, I think then that motivates them, or could possibly motivate them, to go the other direction a little bit and get away from just going out there to have a little fun and get scared and maybe interact with some people and some spirits, and begin to take it more seriously. And at the same time, those groups out there that are in it just for the ghost factor or the fear factor, they will fall off and find some other hobby to follow.
I think one of the problems we're looking at is Cooper's a professional, I'm a professional, Dave, you're a professional. We're looking at it from the point of view of professional people who are seeking credibility. We're wanting to bring, not for ourselves so much, we're looking to bring credibility to the field. And I think we're in the minority. And in a way, I think sometimes we're overestimating the crowd out there. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I mean, I just think that there's, you know what I'm trying to say? It's just a matter of, we want standards, we want code of conduct, but we're probably in the minority.
Dave, you'll notice he didn't lump me in that professional group.
Well, yeah, that's because you're the journalist, man. Corey, go ahead.
Here's my opinion. You know, I know that Markham thinks that we're kind of in the minority, but not quite necessarily. But, you know, here's my thoughts on it, and this is just my opinion, and some may like it and some may not. I'm thinking that most of the groups out there that don't want to have a code of conduct put on them, they're doing something wrong, they know it, and they don't want to be controlled by it.
I don't know about that. Carin, I'm curious to get your opinion on that. Do you think that the teams don't know about it?
What do you mean they don't know about it?
About the code of conduct, if they don't even care about it?
I think he's kind of right. I mean, the people who are doing things the right way are not afraid of code of conduct, are not worried about it, as far as the people who are either doing something wrong or they're just doing it just because they're in it for the ghost hunt. They're the ones that are more worried about the code of conduct, because if they are held to a standard, it's going to be more of a, they'll just be like, it's, I mean, maybe it's a good thing because maybe it'll weed out some of them. So maybe like, this is too much for us. We don't want to do all this just to go out and run around cemeteries and haunted locations. But I think that those of us that are in it for the right reasons and doing things the right way, we want it. again, I said this earlier, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, just because there's so many variables and so many different opinions. But we're not afraid of it. We would embrace it if it was able to be done.
Mm-hmm. Do you see, Carin, a lot of people out there who are just radical in the field, or is this something that is probably overreacted to in the paranormal?
Absolutely not. It's definitely, there's some radical stuff. And over the past 30 years, listen, you keep saying I've been in here a long time. I'm not even that old, Dave.
I know.
I'm only 39, Dave, but yes, I have been. I mean, I've been dealing with this since I've been 2 years old, and I started investigating and helping people when I was pretty much 18. So it's been quite a long time. But the stories that I've heard, even in the last 10 years, and I don't work with a group anymore. I do not have a formal group. People contact me. I get them help. I assist other groups. If I have somebody come to me with a case, I bring in people from either other groups or, a professional in this field or an expert in that field, and I gather everybody up. So I'm more freelance because of all of the awful experiences I had working with groups. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So, I mean, even in my own experience, every group I was in was just a sideshow. I mean, just the things that went on, and it was, and I just couldn't take it. I'm like, I went to my last investigation with the group. We were at a residential home. Things went on. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And I walked out of there, and that was the last time I ever worked with that group. I was just like, I'm just embarrassed to even have my name on this. Like, forget it. But, I think that some of the things that go on, and like you mentioned before, Dave, I don't know if the guys were listening earlier, you had mentioned someone that you found out was charged $20,000 to help them. I mean, things like that alone are just embarrassing. And that's just a con artist. People, what are people going to think about us? I don't want to let these con artists into my house. So yeah, I think it happens too often, unfortunately. And people breaking into cemeteries, people breaking into haunted locations. I knew a group that somebody was arrested because they had stolen out of somebody's home. They stole checks, or I think it was checks. They sold checks, were writing checks off of they stole out of a residential home. So unfortunately, it does happen often. We don't hear about it though, because it's not something you're going to see in the media. It's not something you're going to see in the newspaper, really, unless there's, something really big. So we, unfortunately, though you guys are on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure that happens here they never hear about, and vice versa. Unless somebody posts it on Facebook, how am I to know an investigation that they had went wrong, or they had this group that was partying at the hotel or whatever location was at? I didn't hear about that. It doesn't always get shared, and maybe if it did, people would be more appalled and say, okay, maybe it is time to do something. But unfortunately, those stories kind of get pushed under the rug a lot of the times.
Cooper, I'm curious for you to respond on what Carin said.
Well, and again, until I have a statement, I mean, and I can always go to the hotel manager or the owner and get a statement, and then I have documentation in front of me. Until I have the documentation, I'm not going to go out publicly and say, so-and-so did this, because that can set me up for slander. You know what I mean? So until I have that statement in front of me, I can take the word and the statement of the individual that dropped out of that particular team, because she did. One of the team members actually left the team because that investigation or that entertainment didn't go the way she had planned. Everyone got drunk, and she left the hotel crying. And she went to her partner and she turned in all the paperwork and said, "I'm done. Bye." If I get statements in front of me, then by all means, I'll make it public. And then, of course, Dave, you know about the psychic here, again, in Mount Vernon, that got put in prison for, scamming $50,000 from clients. It's getting out of control. So, totally agree. Something needs to happen. And that did hit.
If a priest does something wrong, it's on the news, right? If a Catholic priest does something wrong, it's on the news. If a teacher does something to a student, you have all these teachers sleeping with students now. You see it on CNN. If a politician does something, you see it on the news. If a doctor is charged with some kind of illegal practices or malpractice, you see it on the news. Unfortunately, this is a field where it's not out there, and it could go both ways. It could be a good thing that it brings light to it, and we get these standards, and we get these these rules in place, or it could be a bad thing where people are like, oh, this field, these people, they're all nuts. So it could go either direction. You never know.
Corey, do you think that there is a standard that needs to be set?
Oh, there definitely is a standard that needs to be set, and it's going to take alliances like the ones that we've been making with some local groups around here that all have like minds. We all have a code, and I'm not going to say conduct this time. I'm going to say code of ethics. We all run on the same ethical plane. And, it's getting out there in front of it, and it's getting out there in social media and saying, hey, this is what you need to look for when you need help. Ask that group, do they have a code of conduct, a code of ethics? Do they charge? Do they want you to leave your home when they do it? Tell them what to look for. Get it out there. Advertise it as best as we have the ability to, so that people know what the right thing to look for is. And doing that will make it to where people are informed. The informed, as they used to say, the informed consumer, even though there's no consumer here because we don't charge for anything. But having that informed person gives them the ability to go, well, these groups right here, they're good. I should call them. These groups right here, they don't have anything that that should have. I'm not calling them. Enough of that, and that makes those fringe groups that don't have crap, that are destroying stuff and are causing havoc, it'll make them go away because there's nothing for them to do.
Question coming in from Twitter from Andrew. He's saying, so could these odd groups who are unprofessional possibly be planted to disrupt the paranormal field of inquiry? Preacher, let's get your opinion.
I don't think so, because I don't think there's enough mainstream interest beyond Zach Bagans and what we see on TV. And sadly, I think most people think that that's the way paranormal investigation should be done. Mm-hmm. I think I have to agree with Corey. It's going to take a media campaign or some way of getting the word out, where we do call out without specifically saying this group is a bunch of charlatans, but we have to say groups that do this or have this lack of standards are the charlatans and should be avoided. Buyer beware, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Everett, your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're plants. I don't think... like Eric said, I don't think there's enough mainstream interest. I think that they are just groups of people who are untrained and are going out and having fun on their own time and disrupting other people's lives. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're plants.
You can almost compare it to golf. Okay, because we all go to the golf course, we all go to the driving range, we play a round of golf, whether you're a scratch golfer or whether you're, a 32 handicap, which is absolutely terrible, probably the reason why I quit playing golf a number of years ago and never been happier. But, golf is pretty much the same way. It does have its rules. It does have its etiquette. That's why, in golf, you can play the public course for $20, or if you want a really nice round with a course that's taken care of and not beat up by all the hacks who are wearing cut-off blue jeans and everything, and you want some etiquette to the game, the way the game is shown on television, you go to a $50 or a $100 course or more.
But again, with golf, you only follow the rules. You only need to follow the rules if you are a member of the USGA. Well, and here in the U.S., the USGA, and you want to record your handicap to play in tournaments. Other than that, once you're out on the course, if your ball's not in the right place, you just kick it a little bit and get yourself a better lie.
Everett, come on. You don't use the famous foot wedge, do you?
No, I don't need to. I'm good enough at golf that I can play without having to cheat. But let's face it, you go out there on a Sunday afternoon, and half the people out there, if they don't like where their ball is, they might just move it a little bit or play with winter rules or, declare the giant pond in the middle of the hole that it's a temporary water hazard so they can just move to the other side of it without a penalty.
I understand that, but there's still an etiquette. There's a dress code. The nicer course you go to, there's a dress code.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's also a field. There's what do they call the guy? Warden. There's a guy
Ranger?
that's actually the guy on the golf course. I can't remember what the term is, but he kind of patrols around making sure you're not fly fishing in a water hazard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but he's not looking to see if you're moving your ball 3 feet to the left. He's making sure you're not drag racing the golf carts up the hill or that kind of thing. He's not really looking at the minute little things that you're doing.
I took up golf and I promptly let it down.
Yeah, a nice walk spoiled by a little white ball.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
And then you hit the ball again.
You know what? The best thing I ever did in my life was quit golf. Honestly.
Am I the only one here that has a driving range on their property?
Probably.
I played golf.
Yeah, pretty much.
I played golf one time, and it was a mandatory battalion golf day. And we had more fun hitting the ball at the damn reporters and the curl than we did playing golf.
My favorite thing to do is when I knocked one off, which was almost every shot went off into the rough. It's like I'd go in looking for my ball and never catch it, but I might have a half a dozen of somebody else's. It was like a treasure hunt for me.
All right, changing topics here, guys, in regards to the paranormal here. Coop, I'm curious with your knowledge of this field. As has been stated otherwise from Carin, from Brandie earlier, from Everett, even myself, that, the Code of Conduct is a very, very solid idea, and we'd all love to see it happen. But do you even think it's possible outside of maybe your own group?
Oh, well, that's kind of the purpose of the GPI, getting to the GPI real quick. And we already have about 10 teams that are on the GPI. That's the Global Paranormal Initiative that we'll create. Is it possible? The teams that are all of like mind, that do the things the same way we do, they're in it for the emergency response side of it, not just for a pretty little picture and a cool EVP. They're the teams that are going to go, cool, Code of Ethics, already have one. Take a look at it. Now, like I said earlier, you get all these teams together to create a GPI. The teams that really aren't into a Code of Ethics, again, like was said earlier, they're not in it for anything but themselves. They're in it for fame, for some bait clicks, in some cases. They're in it for themselves. And just like you were talking earlier, I think hour 1 or 2, about TAPS. TAP's own policies aren't in it they're not in it for the client. They're in it for getting evidence. And will the client even see the evidence? No. Will the client have resolution with what's going on in their home? No, not even. And I think if they're investigating, they need to let the client know beforehand, we're not here to help you. We're here for a cool picture and an EVP, and that's it. That, and a Code of Ethics should dictate what is your purpose. If your purpose is only as a fringe group because you want to go out and collect evidence, then state that. If you're in it to help clients, state that. And those are the teams that we're after. Is resolution for a client.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because we didn't touch on that at all in the first 2 hours, and that's like a huge thing. That's like one of my big pet peeves, is like, if you're just going to be in it for the picture and you're going to walk in and say, hey, thanks for the cool evidence, that was great, thanks for letting us in. If you have no intention of like helping a client, you shouldn't even be going into their home in the first place. You should stick to historic locations. You want to go to this, castle or this museum or this pub or tavern, fine. But if, it's a person's life is not somewhere to go collect evidence and just kind of like walk out the door and say, thanks for your time, thanks for letting us in, and we're not going to do anything to help you.
Well, here's the thing.
The seagull investigators come in, stir up a bunch of crap, and then leave, and then the client is sitting there, now what do? I've got angry spirits or, something's going on. And you have to have a group like Cooper's come in to clean up the mess.
And here's the
Isn't there a
thing.
balance there, though?
Again, it goes back to what is the purpose of your team. There is a balance. There's a reason to have. There should be both sides of it. But my point is, state your purpose. Because if the client thinks you're going to come in and either pass over a spirit or combat a malevolent entity, and basically get peace in the home, protect the family, then state that. If you're, and that's my pet peeve with teams that charge. If you're okay, we don't charge, but we ask for donation. Well, if you're asking for donation, you're still charging, regardless. Mm-hmm. $5 free. We're free, and that's why I put in the public statement. If that team says they're charging, look somewhere else, because there's 5 teams here locally that do not charge a dime. We deal with 5 cases a day. We're getting more and more boots on ground. So, our job is escalating. And that, because, again, the astral team is in tandem with us when we're boots on ground, as well as the 5 cases a day they're doing globally. So when it comes down to it, I scoff at paranormal entertainment. It's not entertaining for our clients when they're getting pushed downstairs by a spirit, when they're getting scratched by a malevolent entity, or when they're getting abducted by aliens. That's not entertaining. So, and we're on call 24/7, 365 days a year. We're not a, weekend warrior, let's go out and do some ghost busting. And I really don't care about a hot spot. Waverly Hills, woohoo, it's already been proven. The only time our team goes to a hot spot is when we take our initial new members of the team out to show them, look, here's what it looks like when the EMF meter is going off. Cool. Here, look at this picture. That's what a spirit looks like. That's the only time we go to a hot spot. So getting back to it, is there a code of ethics that needs to be done? I think so. It depends on what your purpose is, but state your damn purpose. So that when the client calls on your team, they know not to expect you to clear their house.
But couldn't there be a balance, though? If a team is well-rounded and you had some people in the various professional fields, whether it be sociology, psychology, we've talked about that before, and then somebody in the whether they be a medium or somebody who can help the client and cleanse the house or remove the spirits, wouldn't it do a lot for the credibility of the field if a team could come in there and collect the evidence, find a way to present the evidence to their other, their affiliated groups or the public, and clear the house or provide that service to the client instead of kind of dividing it into, well, these guys come in and they just want to get the evidence, and then there's the other groups that don't care about the evidence, they're just going to help the client. Is there a middle ground where somebody can develop a team that does both? Collects the evidence, presents the evidence, and helps the client?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. So we might not be balanced when we have a global case because we're there for the client. When we are boots on ground, we are balanced in that we use a medium, we use the astral, and we use electronics. So we are using all three worlds when we're boots on ground. Now, do we get boots on ground cases very often? Not really, but that's picking up, like I said earlier. Now, are you going to actually find a team that's balanced? That is probably about 1% of the 32,000 that Dave said was listed in the United States.
And I want to add in here, too, is that, with the alliances that we have around here, we have some teams that go in and work a lot from the electronic side and a lot of that type of stuff. And for some clients, they'll get, evidence that those clients aren't crazy. There's nothing really bad happening, but, they'll mediate and they'll do that type of stuff for those clients. In the end, the client is happy. If that same team goes in and finds something malevolent or something wild and out of hand, that team will often call our emergency team to come in and clear it out because we have the resources to do that. We may get a case that comes our way where, a customer needs or a client needs us to come in and check to see what's going on. There's nothing really malevolent or anything. And we will call on them because they have more of the resources for that part of it. We work together and we balance out that way. But we know to call upon each other to make sure that the client is taken care of.
And that, to me, is para-unity.
We only got a couple minutes left, guys, in the show. And Carin, I want to get you in on here quickly here because with everything that your family went through, and it's been a very high profile in that happening, do you feel that other people who are in maybe a similar or the same circumstances your family went through, do you counsel those types of people if they reach out to you? And do you point them in the right direction?
Time.
Or how do you point them in the right direction, though?
It really depends on, what they're telling me. And I always start with, when you're talking dark entities. You're talking, not a human spirit, right? You're talking something darker, somebody who's calling me, something like that.
Absolutely.
Well, the first thing that I would do, of course, I always, sympathy first. You always assume that they're telling 100% the truth, and you always assume what they're telling you is what, they believe, obviously. And I, talk to them and have a nice conversation and get a lot of information, kind of having an interview process without actually making them feel like they're having an interview. And then I like to get, a psychologist perspective. Somebody, I'm not saying like, hey, I want you to go to a psychologist, but somebody that I'll bring in, a few people that I have that are, they have their master's degrees. They're actually educated people in this field. They're experienced. I'll also have them have a conversation with them at some point. Same thing. They handle it the same way. We don't make them feel like they're having an interview process, all sympathy, empathy, whatever. We just 100% believe them, and until we find otherwise. But if it's something dark like that, I don't just trust anybody because I'm not going to just call a paranormal group and say, hey, could you guys take a look? I'm really going to take the time and the effort to find the right people. Most of the time, if I can, I do it myself and put a team together. If it's somebody far away, I definitely do my research in that and find out, regardless of what it is. Finding everything out. Are they religious? Do they need a priest? How do we need to handle this? I don't know. I'm hoping that these guys could agree with me that you always want to take somebody's beliefs into consideration first. You're obviously not going to go into you're not going to throw a priest at somebody if they don't have any religious belief whatsoever. You're not just going to go that route, or you're not going to send a shaman to their house if that's something they believe. But you really ought to take the time to get to know the family and do your research and do the interviews and get to the heart of it when it comes to something like that. If they're claiming it's a dark entity, as I mentioned before, Dave, you want to be a paranormal investigator at that point. You don't want to be a ghost hunter. You're investigating. Are there underlying mental issues? Could this be schizophrenia? Is there a drug or alcohol problem? Is this is there trauma of some sort going on in the house? I mean, you just don't even believe some of the things you run into.
I agree.
You know, so sometimes it's not always right. It's not always demonic. Like, oh, you know, I have a demon in the house. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's something going on in their mind or alcohol or drugs. But I do take the utmost care with. Yes, I do take the utmost care.
I know you do.
Go ahead. You could cut in. You could cut in.
I do.
You have to. You have to.
You know, it's that time. I got to wrap things up. Carin Smurl, thank you for bailing me out tonight. Appreciate it.
No worries.
Everett Thiemer, Eric Cooper, Eric Markham, and Corey Rees, thank you guys for hopping on in here. I want to say tomorrow night on the program, Gary Parker will join us. We're talking about the alien messages tie into Egypt as well. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spaceoutradio.com. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of this show, rocking us in and out every single night. We appreciate him doing that. My team helping me put together this show on a nightly basis, really appreciate it. We also want to say thank you to Brandie Wells for hopping on in the first 2 hours as well about the topic of the Paranormal Code of Conduct. Did we solve anything? Probably not. But the one thing we did do was open a few eyes as to what's going on in the paranormal, and that's always important. Want to say thank you to all our listeners on Twitter and in the chat rooms, as well as you at home and driving in your vehicles for sharing your night with us. We very much appreciate it, and we're going to do it in 21 hours from now, because together, my friends, we own the night. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Mr. Bubblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night.